Beyond the Strange.
Natural and unexplained phenomena.
Spiritual activity.
Cryptids. The future and the past.
Conspiracies. Beliefs and ancient remains. The radio program for you, the listener, and bringing your stories and concerns to the table. And now your hosts, Dave C. and Brian Anderson.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Strange. I am your host, Dave C., and with us is Brian Anderson. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I am doing good. Having a little bit of an issue trying to find this link to the show to give to Holographic at the moment, but other than that, I'm doing great.
Okay. Well, I can do that too here in a bit if we need to, but I'm glad you're doing great. Sorry to hear about your Hawks, though.
Well, you know, when you've been a Hawks fan since pretty much they entered the NFL, you get used to them shooting themselves in the foot.
Dude, I know all about it. For everyone out there listening, I am a Raiders fan because I am from the Bay, and that's how it is. So, yeah, I don't go on the other side of the bridge. I stay on the east side, and yeah, I know what it's like. Oh man, hoping they turn around their problems too.
Well, you know, I mean, if you're ever in the NFL, you hope all of your teams, whichever one you're rooting for, actually do, you know, turn around all their problems.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And unfortunately, right now, it looks like the Niners are turning around for the worse. So I don't know what to say about that, but hey, that's it is what it is. So whatever. But
yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think there's sorry there, I was stretching out of the way of the microphone. I think there's an issue with the posting on YouTube as far as the videos, you know, the episodes are posted. Mm-hmm. And the link just doesn't show when you're on the channel.
Oh, okay. Usually it'll say live.
Yeah, it doesn't say live or anything like that. And I was looking on it for it on Google Plus and trying to get it through that way, and I couldn't find it on Google Plus either. It's really strange.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm looking for it right now. And let's get that posted in Twitter for the link. Holographic, where would you like the link at? Because do you know where she wanted it? Where Holographic wanted the link?
Well,
Twitter or Facebook or?
I would say just put it on Twitter at the moment. You can pick it up from there.
Let's do that. And yeah, we're going to do that right now. So sorry, buddy. I'm not sure what's going on with the link, but here you go. It's on Be Strange. And wow, it's been an interesting week for online radio. Everyone seems to be having issues this week.
It might be just the internet itself having issues.
Yeah, first it was Jimmy, and then now Space Boy last night, and now it seems to be me. Me, why not? So,
hey. Yeah, you can't do it. You know, it's just one of those things.
But I tell you what, I feel privileged to be in that group, so there you go.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But anyways, yeah, good evening, everybody. And thank you all for being here. This is the show for you, the listener. And tonight, we have something a little We have a good one. That's all I can say. Tonight is something that is what Beyond the Strange, what we make the show for you. We want to hear your stories and your experiences, and we really mean that. And tonight we're going to be doing that with Byron Lacy, who's written a book called Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee. And Brian, I got to tell you, I'm excited. I can't wait.
Oh, I can't wait to get him on either. I mean, this is going to be, I believe this is probably going to be one of those really fun shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good one. So we are live here on Google Hangouts, streaming from YouTube. I did put out the link out there, everybody, so hopefully you guys can find it. And you can follow us on Twitter at Strange Days 2015. The hashtag is #BeStrange with the letter B and then the word strange after that. We also have a Beyond the Strange Facebook page where we post most of our show's info and updates. There is a Google Plus Beyond the Strange profile, and our email is beyondthestrange@gmail.com. Check us out at the Beyond the Strange website. It's at beyondthestrange.com, and it's starting to roll. Thanks to Brian, really appreciate it. And he's got some links up there that you can see. There, it's a Facebook icon and a YouTube icon, and they'll take you right to the show's information and the show's channel. And finally, you can join the show with your Gmail account or call in on Skype. The ID is Strange Days 2015. Unfortunately, right now we're using we're going to be using the Skype to speak with Byron, and get his story and what's going on. Earlier actually, just what was it, 2 or 3 days ago, Brian, you posted something in Facebook. It's about the geoengineering cover-up, and this was it was revealed lost in 1978.
Well, before we get into that, let's start with, let me approach one subject here because it's been throughout the news and all over Facebook and everything about this star that's 75 light years away, that has really funky readings, that they've noticed, and everybody's saying, oh, it's an alien structure. Well, okay, I think it was 1963 when Dyson proposed the theory behind the Dyson sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just go into this, we'll just touch on it briefly because I don't want everybody to get their hopes up yet. Okay, one of the things that Dyson theorized was with a Dyson sphere, if you were looking at a distant star, the chances are you wouldn't see it because of this sphere that they would build around their local star. And what they would do is they would harness the star's energy. So you would have a very, 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 very little chance of seeing the light or any of the gamma rays or X-rays coming from that star because they were harnessing that energy for themselves in their local system. Now, what they discovered is that this particular star, and I can't remember the designation of it right now, has some pretty odd behavior. Now, the scientists that have been doing the research, alien life is their last postulation. Their very last, and they're more than forthright with that, but it seems like everybody who's writing all the articles brings up their very least likely possibility and throws it up as the very first one. So don't get your hopes up on that one yet. Besides, I think it's like 75 light years away. And yeah, we're never going to really, really honestly know without, not anytime soon anyways. Let's just put it that way, at least as far as we're concerned technologically. So I just wanted to cover that one up really quick.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
So yeah, but going on to the weather modification in these documents. Now, these documents aren't really lost. They were actually published, and then they were removed from publication, and then they were released for publication. And that's the way it is with all these geoengineering documents. Matter of fact, the one I saw a few months ago that was, I think, dated for 2005 or 2007, I can't locate anymore on the internet. They go in and out, in and out, in and out. Now, this one goes back to, I believe it was 1978.
Mm-hmm.
And it briefs you on everything from the late 1940s all the way up to, I believe, 1977, as far as some things are concerned. And there's still some documents out there for this weather modification about how they seed clouds, actually calling them chemtrails, which is where you get the terminology chemtrail from. And, you know, we've discussed this before.
Mm-hmm.
I knew about it growing up in California in the 60s and, well, late, born in 69, so it would have been the 70s because they were performing it in California in the 70s. However, the information that was revealed in this particular document is if you don't have enough clouds around and you seed them, you create drought conditions because it dries them up. It doesn't produce rain, which is what initially they wanted to do. However, when you have enough clouds around and they seed them with barium, aluminum, and, you know, coal ash or what have you, it actually causes flooding. So they knew this back in 78, and they probably knew it way before this, but this was just another overview of what they've gone through, what they've done, what they've noticed, what they've seen. Now, I approached you several weeks ago, and we discussed it the other day about, you know, this sculpting of weather and what it might actually do as far as affecting, you know, land. And if you you know, okay, if let's think about this for a second, especially here on the west. Well, I'm not exactly on the west coast. You're more on the west coast than I am.
Before you start in that, I did want to read this really quick, and
sure.
And then also I want to bring a point because something just scared the crap out of me about an hour ago. We got an emergency broadcast system alert. You know, it stopped all the programming, every channel, and, you know, on our cable system, and they said that there was going to be some flash flooding from thunderstorms in the Sacramento area. You're familiar with California, so you know where Sacramento is, and you know where I'm at in Fairfield. And they said that they said this is exactly what they said: get to higher ground. Just basically, you'll save your life if you get to higher ground. And it just came out of nowhere, dude. Nowhere. I look outside. I look towards Sacramento. Darkest clouds I've seen in a long time coming our way. Now, is it raining? No. Is it flooding? No. But I believe the water would come from somewhere else. And yeah, dude, it's a scary thought. But go ahead with what you were saying too. I'm sorry.
Well, no. I mean, where the flash flooding occurred, you know, northeast of Los Angeles. This, you know, what was it? A couple days ago. This past weekend. We'll just call it the past weekend here. That's actually where I was raised. I mean, Palmdale, California, right outside of Lancaster, Edwards Air Force Base, right there at the Grapevine itself, just, you know, out 14 from L.A. So, but when we were getting into it, and what I was trying to explain yesterday when we were on the line, is that when you get into this weather modification stuff and you start thinking about it, when you start thinking about the actual geological effects of what could possibly happen, and it just occurs to me that if you take the West Coast, especially around California there, you have the North American plate, which rides over the Pacific plate, and then and it's a slip fault zone. Well, if you wanted to induce an earthquake, your easiest way would be to relieve pressure on the fault itself. Well, how do you do that? Well, you would remove weight from the one that sits on top, therefore leaving all the weight of the plate that's going underneath. Leave all the weight on top of it, but you remove the weight off the top plate. Therefore, you relieve the stress, and you would be allowed to actually induce an earthquake if you think about it. And it's a lot of weight. But when you think about weight, what weighs more? Water, 5 gallons of water, or 5 gallons of dry dirt?
Mm-hmm. Definitely water.
Yeah, 5 gallons of water weighs more than 5 gallons of dry dirt because of specific gravity. Water has a higher specific gravity than what dirt does, dry dirt. So if you really wanted to induce an earthquake, well, I mean, theoretically, and this is all speculation again, and it's just a theory of mine going down that path, you would want to remove the water weight mainly from the plate that's riding over the other plate, because you could, with more weight on the bottom plate, you could actually theoretically induce an earthquake, and a rather large one at that. So the longer you have a place going through drought, the more likely you're bound to have an earthquake of some sort, especially when you have all that tension.
Yeah, we've been experiencing, we have been experiencing earthquakes here and there, not just in the northern part, but in the southern part of California. And if we don't get rain, which we discussed also yesterday, and if it's not gradually, if it's just one big flash flood, or it just starts raining like crazy, that's not going to be good for us. It's got to come in little by little, and it's
Yeah, well, we talked about that yesterday as well. When you have land that's been, baking for a couple of years without any real water. When you get a downfall of water, you get exactly what happened, north of LA over the weekend here. You get the flash flood. But all that water doesn't absorb into the ground. It just runs to the nearest tributary and tries to get back out to the ocean. That's what it's bound to do. I mean, you're going to have very little absorption. What you need to start off with a light rainfall to soften up the ground, to make the soil itself more absorbent. And then when you have the heavier rainfalls, it's able to actually absorb more until you get to total saturation, and then you start having mudslides.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and give our listeners a little information about Byron, and I mean, that's a great topic. I think we should definitely come back to that, and come back to everything that we were just talking about later on. But let's go ahead and get into Byron's bio real quick. Go to a break, and then we'll bring him on. So Byron holds a BS in English, an M.A, and M.F.A in art. He has exhibited in galleries and museums throughout the United States. Byron has worked as a summer camp director, cook, carpenter, plumber, electrician, English and art teacher, freelance artist, eligibility specialist for Texas Department of Human Services, and investigator for Texas Child Protective Services. He has used these skills in researching his own abductions. He also tries to help abductees, especially newbies, gain perspective of and cope with this phenomena in their lives. He has lectured at the Houston UFO Network about incidents where his life has been saved by aliens, and has written a book entitled Chosen: Chronicles of an Alien Abductee. And we will go ahead and we'll go into our break now. And when we come back, we will be speaking with Byron Lacy. Don't go away. And welcome back. We are here with, sorry, I don't even know where I'm at now. We are here at Beyond the Strange, and we are about to call Byron Lacy. And yeah, let's do this.
Hello?
Hi, Byron.
Yes.
Hey, Byron, this is Dave with Beyond the Strange. We're here with Brian Anderson, and we are live.
All right. Well, I'm ready to go.
Awesome. How you doing this evening, by the way?
Well, I think I was taken last night, to be truthful. I wasn't going to mention it, but I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing better right now than I have all day.
Well, that's good. Is everything okay? I mean, would you like to continue, or is everything, you know?
Oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I've been doing things all day long. Just it's an empty feeling, and nervousness. Hard to cope with my cats wanting stuff from me because they've been the only ones around today. I took a bunch of neurotransmitter replacement stuff like L-phenylalanine, theanine, choline, and that helps quite a bit. And then I ate 3 big meals today, and that helps too. It started out with leg cramps, but they never did really materialize, thank goodness.
Yeah,
so anyway.
I hate leg cramps. I totally understand that feeling. It sucks. I hate that. But well, I'm glad you're good enough to join us tonight and share your experience with us, and we greatly appreciate it. So let's go ahead and start. Let's talk about your first experience with your contacts with UFOs. And
well, my first experience was in 1955, and I was either 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
And the event played out over 3 nights. And interestingly enough, I had another thing that happened much later, not long ago in the 80s, that played out over 3 nights as well. But anyway, in this one, my mom took me and put me to bed. They always closed the door because they stayed up and watched TV for a while. They put me to bed probably at 7 or 8 o'clock at that point in time. And they would leave a little nightlight on in the room. But she left, and I settled down to go to sleep, and suddenly there's 3 little men staring at me over the edge of the bed. And the bed was a small bed, but it was an adult height. So basically I could see their shoulders and their heads. They had really big, huge black eyes. And one of them's face, and he looked like a rag doll. And I didn't even put this in the book. He looks like a rag doll, and then his features would change as if he'd been sewed in a different way. And that was really strange. And I yelled out for my mom, and they disappeared. Well, they disappeared the minute she walked in the room and turned on the light.
Right.
So she didn't see them. And I told her what was going on, and she said, well, they're not here now, and she left. The next night, the same thing happened. The third night, I called her in my room, and of course, they were gone. And she sits down on the bed, and she put her hand on top of my head, and I had a burr haircut at 5 years old. And she said, son, you're just going to have to deal with them yourself. And don't call me in here for this anymore. And she left. And this time, though, after she closed the door, they were back, still at the foot of the bed, and there was another one in there, and he was almost 7 foot tall, and he looked all the world like Captain Hook from the Disney movie, Peter Pan. And I could not see his face. I could tell he had a patch on one eye, or it seemed like it. He had a huge, huge, big black hat, a pirate hat, and a vest, white shirt, and he was dancing around the room, really weird looking. And sometimes it would almost feel, sometimes it felt like my bed was spinning in the middle of the room, which is strange because the bed actually had the head up against the wall. But I have very clear images of the bed being in the middle of the room. He danced around, and then I couldn't move. I thought maybe I was tied up, but I think I managed to look at one of my hands. It wasn't tied, but I couldn't move. And then just suddenly it was all over, and they were gone. And that was the end of that experience.
And this whole time, I'm sorry, I was just going to ask you a quick question.
Good.
I was just going to ask you, and this whole time, your mother did not hear a thing.
No, she didn't. Nobody came in the room.
And you have siblings and that sort of thing, that type of family where you have more than just one person? Or?
I have a sister. She was about 1 year old or less at that time. She's 4 years younger than me. So I have no memory of her being in that room, so I know she wasn't sleeping in the room with me. She was probably with them.
Okay. I'm sorry, please continue. That I wasn't sure if man, I just can't imagine, that.
Well, I have a slight question there, Byron. Now, your mom said just to deal with them. So she didn't tell you that they weren't real.
No, she never ever said they weren't real. She never said they were just dreams. She never said I was making it up. She said, you'll just have to deal with them yourself.
I kind of find that, I'm sorry, but I kind of find that a little on the strange side. I mean, just the wording of it itself is a little on the strange side. Did she ever have any experiences that you know of?
Well, everything I got from them through a channel, Marla Fries, who worked on, she was a technical advisor for the show Medium, and she is a medium. And I met her at Dreamland Festival with Mr. Strieber in 2009, shortly after I discovered I was being abducted, because when the event happened in 1955, I was told not to bring it up again, and I didn't. My mother seemed very adamant about that, so we never talked about it. And because I never talked about it, it didn't really get put into my the timeline of my life. I had to keep it a secret. I just didn't talk about it, and I never forgot it, but I never understood what it was. Not even when alien things started coming on TV. However, I always liked science fiction, but I really never cared for alien movies.
I could understand that. You know, at this point in your life, I could really understand that.
Plus, they're really creepy looking, and they're scary. I mean, even with myself, I can't take staring, looking at pictures and that sort of thing. Also, Byron, I just wanted to thank you again for coming on and being brave and sharing your experience with us. We know this is a really difficult thing, and I can't even imagine. So thank you again. Please continue.
You're welcome. I'm going to jump around a bit tonight. I'm afraid I'm sort of scattered. The worst part about being abducted, and when they harvest neurotransmitters, it can be very unpleasant afterwards. I never experience it because I'm either knocked out or they wipe my memory. But the worst part for me is not being able to talk about it up until just recently. All my life I've told people these stories, but I didn't know their source. And some people still wouldn't believe a lot of the things I said. One person actually called me a liar, and then other people would say that God must really like me and that I have some special purpose. So that's the whole gamut. But then other people would just sit there sort of looking amazed, but they actually did believe me. So I'm very open about it now. I've got it on my Facebook page because I've got a book coming out. I'm not going to be able to hide in a closet. So I actually told a person today, although I did it in such a way that she won't really realize it until she listens to one of my broadcasts.
Right. And you mentioned in your book also that writing this book, it wasn't just for you, but it was for helping other abductees who don't really know that they've been abducted or who are just recently finding out. And after that comment, we have a person in the audience that wants to ask. Les Johnson wants to know, was your mother dealing with them herself? And I'm guessing he's talking about the aliens.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I want to say this about my mother. She always had nervous problems. In fact, now, looking back on it all, she had PTSD, except it was probably, instead of post-traumatic stress or disorder, it was ongoing trauma. Mm-hmm. And so she was, she had a lot of the symptoms of an abductee. I want to jump to one other thing that happened.
Sure, please.
Later, but in 19, actually, I've discovered, I think a lot of things happened in 61, and I believe I think that's the date for this. I'm not positive. The song, "Does Your Chewing Gum Lose Its Flavor on the Bedpost Overnight," became popular at that particular point in time, that date. So I have it written down somewhere, but I'm outside where I got my old bars. So anyway, that song started playing in my head when I went to bed, and it wouldn't stop. And I had never had a jingle or a song or anything like that play in my head. I could not get to sleep. I tossed and turned, and I laid there, and I felt it was almost like being awake and asleep at the same time, but the song just kept playing and kept playing. So when Mom woke me up the next morning to go to school, I told her, I can't go to school. I didn't sleep any last night, Mom. And she goes, okay. And I go, Mom, what happened? Why did this song keep playing in my head all night? And she said she didn't. She said, I don't know. And she put me on the sofa, gave me a Coke, because we used Coke as medicine, Coca-Cola, at that time, especially if you were sick, sore throat, or upset stomach. She put me on there and turned the TV on with some cartoons. Well, actually, there weren't cartoons. It was soap operas, I remember, because I just remember the picture. Well, she said, don't go to sleep because I want you to sleep tonight. I said, okay. So she went about doing her daily activities, and first she went into the dining room where our phone was, and she made a call, although I didn't hear it because she was sort of whispering. Then she came back, and the day went by. I stayed on the sofa all day and watched TV, and Dad got home. And he walks through the front door, and he doesn't really say anything to me. He walks straight towards my mom, who's standing just outside of the dining room, and takes her into the dining room, and they have some kind of conversation that I can't hear. And he comes back in to the living room and sits down on the sofa next to me, and he looks at me and says, son, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to take you to a psychiatrist. And I'm going, wow. This, because I told him I heard a song playing in my head all night, and he said something else, but what really stuck in my mind then, and I didn't know why in the world he was telling me this, he said, we don't talk about ourselves. I hardly knew anything about my parents except what happened while I was with them. We had a relative, you had an ancestor in the late 1800s or early 1900s who told people that little men came into her room and talked to her. And they put her in an insane asylum, and that's where she died. And then that was the end of the conversation. But this conversation had a big impact on my life, because I'm sitting here going, and I can't tell them anything. I cannot tell them anything, or they're going to do bad things to me. My parents are my enemy. And I tell you, they probably had an easier chore of raising me, especially when I was a teenager, than any other parents have with their kid, because I kept everything to myself. I didn't tell them if I was heartbroken. I didn't tell them if I was depressed. And I went through a lot of depression, although now I have a different opinion of what it was. I think it was neurotransmitters being harvested. But anyway, so it started isolating me from my family, because it seemed to me, and of course I was only about 10 or 11 years old, maybe 9, it seemed to me that it was me against them, and I had to watch out for myself. So I sort of had to start growing up under my own tutelage.
Hey, Byron. Let me ask you. Let me ask you really quick. Do you remember this ancestor of yours? Did it come from your mother's side of the family or from your father's?
I have a feeling that it came from my father's side of the family, because he didn't really talk about her ancestors hardly at all. He didn't talk about ours very much, but he did some, because there are some colorful stories about these people. My great-grandfather donated the granite. He and 2 other men donated the granite to build the Capitol in Austin. And they were ranchers. Really, they wanted a railroad track put from Austin to Marble Falls so that they could get their cattle shipped out easier instead of having to use all the trails. So, and they owned this big mountain, and it was really just in the way because you couldn't graze cattle on it. So they gave him the granite, and for a long time he had an apartment in the Capitol in Austin. But anyway, so I'm pretty sure it's from my father's side, and my great-grandfather came here from Ireland.
Gotcha.
Which is supposed to be significant with abductees.
Our producer, Holographic, if you don't mind me asking another question, she would like to know if you have ever been contacted by Men in Black or you know, by the or followed by the government in any way.
Well, I've never seen any Men in Black except in the movie, but I had a strange experience coming home from New Orleans. I went to New Orleans in 2009 or 10 because I'd been in a gallery there and it closed down. Well, on the way back, there are a lot of long stretches of road, and this black SUV with gold, and it's not the typical Man in Black car, with gold trim on it instead of chrome, and windows that you could not see through, which is against the law. And it didn't have any license plates either, which is also against the law. And this car followed me for about 50 miles, and it would be in front of me. It would pull over into the next lane, and I'd get in front of it, and it would follow me. But it was all around my car for almost an hour. And then it was just gone. I didn't even see where it exited, which doesn't mean it didn't take a normal exit, but I just didn't see it.
I understand. So, so basically, what's going on up to what I'm perceiving, what's going on with you at roughly from up to the age of 10 is that you're kind of being isolated from everyone, including your own parents.
Yes.
Yes, I was happiest. I was happiest when I was at school. Just the opposite of everybody else.
I gotcha.
Because
so
I did have friends at school, etc.
I gotcha. So from that age, what else has gone on?
Oh gosh. Well, in 1961 is when I saw my first spaceship, and I haven't talked about that tonight, I believe. So I was in a music class where we learned some about choir, we learned to play the tonette, we learned a little bit about music, so that if we decided we wanted to go into band when we got into junior high and high school, we could. And it was right before junior high. And that day, we had a substitute teacher, and she had dark hair, very blue eyes, and pale white skin. And she was very, very pretty. She was in her 20s, I would say, probably just fresh out of college. And I had never seen her before. She had never substituted for any of my teachers. I come from a pretty little school at that time. I think we had 4 to 6 classrooms, and that was it. So it was such a pretty day, and it had been cold and wet, and she wanted us to go outside and do exercises. And we weren't too hot on that idea, but we didn't complain. We went with her. So she lined us up outside next to the school building in 4 rows of either 4 or 5, because there were either 16 or 18 of us in the class, something like that. And we were on gravel, and she was standing under an oak tree facing us, and she had us, start doing side straddle hops. And we got through about 3 of them when we all just froze. And we looked up at the top of the oak tree, and there was a ship. It looked like a submarine, flipped upside down, the George Washington's nuclear submarine to be exact, and the conning tower gone, and the deck and all the buildings of the battleship Missouri were attached underneath it. But it didn't, that was the basic shape. However, instead of guns, there were no barrels on the guns. They looked like rooms. And the whole thing was 35 to 45 feet tall and no telling how long. And I knew it wasn't a blimp because it didn't have the seams the way a blimp has. And I had also put together the George Washington submarine and the battleship Missouri, and I looked at them almost every day. So I knew well what they looked like. The ship started moving. The front of it moved just past the top of the tree, and then it was gone. And we were all standing there, and she says, "That was nothing. Let's get back to work." And we do. We all line up obediently, or we were already in line, but we all stand up and we start doing side straddle hops again with her counting, and we get through about 3, and the bell rings, which means an hour has passed, but I myself only experienced about 15 minutes passing. Well, she told us to go into our classes, so we all marched inside. Nobody ever said another word about that to anyone. Now, I told my mother when I got home, I said, "Mom, we saw a UFO." And she says, "Uh-huh." And I said, "Did you hear anything about it on the news?" And she said, "No." That was our conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And Byron, the UFO that you saw and your classmates and your teacher, it was the pics that you sent me was a rendered model, right?
Yes, and it has affected my memory enough, or the way I feel, that it's really close to exact.
Yeah, that is an amazing looking structure, or I can't even describe it. It looks really something I've never seen before in my life. We do have a question from Twitter from Les. He wants to know, does Native American ancestry run in your family?
On my mother's side.
On your mother's side.
My mother was very dark-skinned. She looked like she had a tan all the time. But she had normal facial features, as best I can remember. But they said that there was Indian on her side, but they never said which one. So, yeah, I've got Irish and Indian in my background. Now, Marla Freeze told me that my great-grandfather, and probably his family, and my grandfather and my father had been taken, and that I am the 4th generation.
Wow. I'm just like, wow. That's all I can say is wow.
Let me clarify that a little bit there, Byron. You're the 4th generation of abductees?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
That goes back, way back.
And interestingly, it's when my great-grandfather apparently lived on top of Granite Mountain with all of that quartz crystal in it. That's when he got taken, but I don't know if that actually had anything to do with it or not.
I'm sorry, did you mention quartz crystal?
Yes, granite has a lot of quartz in it.
And your family's been around this a lot?
Oh, yeah. They lived on Granite Mountain when it was, still wild and wasn't a quarry.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Lindsay
and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Oh, well, they came here from either Kentucky or Tennessee, and they brought 250 wagons with them full of people to Marble Falls. And my great-grandfather and his kids, and then these 2 other men owned this land. And I don't believe they lived there, because one of them was actually a Texas politician, and the other one was a scientist interested in geology. So they lived on this granite.
Very, very interesting indeed. And I'm sorry I interrupted you earlier. We just have a question from Twitter from Lynn and Oz. She says, did Byron have a school friend to confide in or someone when that incident happened?
No, nobody talked about it, and I didn't ever talk to anybody about it either, as far as I can remember. So no, it was just strange. I talked to it about my mother. I never forgot that.
Yeah. And the teacher also just kind of passed it along as you didn't see anything, even though you're pretty sure she saw it as well.
Yeah. Well, you know, she was under that tree. I don't know if she actually saw it or not, but she knew it was there. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said that was nothing.
Exactly.
So, and she was never at the school again.
Yeah, that just
and
seems...
I have a feeling she was there for that particular purpose.
It sounds like it. Definitely sounds like it. And Les also wants to know, sorry about all the questions kind of jumping around.
No,
I'm sure it's not following a particular timeline, but we definitely appreciate you answering them. Les wants to know, have you ever been to Joshua Tree and the Granite Rock?
No. Is that in Europe?
Joshua Tree is actually in California.
Yeah, Giant Rock and Joshua Tree, both in Southern California.
Southern California. Yes, thanks.
No, I've never been there. I don't really like to travel. It's really strange, but I'll get anxiety attacks if I'm going to travel anywhere, especially if I'm going to leave the county that I live in, my familiar territory. And I'm always afraid of being lost. It's not so bad now, lately. But I was even afraid of getting lost when I had a GPS with me, which is not a rational thing at all.
Yeah. Well, I've known people that don't enjoy flying, but not really wanting or enjoying to travel because of, I guess it would be described as disorientation.
Yeah. I don't mind the traveling in an airplane so much, although I hate the way they're doing the airports now. Anyway, last time I was on a plane was going to the town where Elvis lived. I can't remember it, for the Dreamland Festival, and I had a nice conversation with the whatever you call them, the airline hostess, about whether she'd ever seen a UFO, and she didn't want to talk to me very much.
Yeah, well, yeah, we understand. But I have a question for you, Byron. Does it feel odd when you leave your hometown? I'm guessing you still live in the same area that you did before, or did you move away when you were younger?
Oh, I lived in Seagoville when I was younger. I live in East Texas now. Seagoville's more central Texas, almost North Texas. It's near Dallas. Mm-hmm. I live out between Houston and Tyler in the piney woods. I have 2 acres of woods, and everybody here has 1 to 3 acres that they live on, so we're not jammed in real close. And I have 3/4 of my property is woods with a tree stuck in one corner of it, and it's still, you can't really see the house for the road because of the trees. I like to be out alone.
I see. I understand. And during your family's interactions with these aliens, did they always stay in the same area as far as where they lived, or did all of you kind of just jump around different places?
Well, we moved. I think I lived in like 7 or 8 cities before I was 6 years old. And then when we were in Seagoville, and that's where we landed when I was 6, we lived in 8 to 10 houses. Mm-hmm. We were always moving. And my dad would just walk in and go with a bunch of boxes, and he'd go, "Pack your stuff. We're moving tomorrow." We wouldn't even know they had bought a house or sold a house or or gotten a different job. We didn't know any of that. But they did not explain themselves very much. We did what they told us to do. And they actually, a lot of things, they thought if they ignored them, they would eventually go away. And usually they did.
Yeah, it sounded like a fight or flight situation.
I've been told that my dad hated them, and I'm not surprised. He hated them because he couldn't stop them. And my dad was like 6'4", and looked a lot like, when he was younger, looked a lot like Dirty Harry. And he'd been a policeman, well, he'd been a merchant seaman, done construction in Guam, carpenter work, plumbing, built houses, a policeman, a prison guard, and then he was a prison guard in El Paso, and then he became a prison guard in Sigaville. We transferred there, and that's where we stayed until I graduated. And a couple of years after I graduated from college, he ended up retiring, and he moved again 3 more times.
Oh my gosh, this is just amazing. I'm getting all of it. I mean, it's just, you don't want to be in the same spot just because.
Except me, I really like to stay in one spot. And I think it's from moving around so much. But well, if it weren't in 2009, it's when I realized that I was an abductee, and that it wasn't spirit guides or anything like that, or guardian angels taking care of me. It was aliens. And one of the ways I was able to cope with the whole thing, if I said, God, I wish there weren't aliens in my life, well, I would have died at 2.5. Most likely, if I hadn't died at 2.5, I would have died at 11. And then there's times after that, there's 8 times that they have intervened. So if it were not for them, I wouldn't be alive. It's really hard for me to stay mad at them very long when I think about that.
When you say that they interacted or that they intervened, these were periods of your time in your life where your life was threatened, or your life was ready to be over for some reason, or?
Well, the very first reason was cancer. When I was 1 year old, I started getting sick. I quit developing. My developmental progress just stopped. I even, instead of starting walking or whatever you do at 1 year old, I started not being able to sit up. And they started taking me to a doctor because I didn't want to eat. I was grumpy. They just knew I was sick. A little country doctor in Marble Falls. And they took me to him for almost 1.5 years. And finally, he sent me to a doctor. He said, well, they tried all this stuff, medicine, everything, nothing worked. He sent me to a specialist in Austin, a urologist, because it got around that time where I couldn't urinate unless I was laying on my side. So they take me to this doctor, and it's in a high-rise hospital in Austin. He takes me upstairs, and Dad said when he came back down, he had me in his arms holding me, and he was as white as his doctor's coat. And he told them that I had a sarcoma. Sarcoma is the most likely to spread throughout your entire body in a very short period of time. Mine had somehow stayed in one place, one small place, for 1.5 years. He said it was a wonder I wasn't already dead, and he said that they should go have a baby. Go make a baby to lessen the shock when I died. Not if I died, when I died. So, and he said, we're going to operate day after tomorrow. And they took me home and then brought me back the next day to the hospital, and the day after that they operated. And I fooled them. I lived. And all they did in 1952 was surgery. They didn't have radiation. They didn't have chemotherapy. They just removed it.
That's amazing. I mean, that's just something. This is beyond the strange. This is Dave C., and we are speaking with Byron Lacy, author of Chosen. Oh my gosh, this is such an amazing story, Byron. We're going to go ahead and take our break real quick, and when we come back, I do have a couple questions from you from your book, and it's just been so fascinating so far. But we shall be back here in a bit, so don't go away. we are back. This is Beyond the Strange. I am your host, Dave Cruz, and we are speaking with Byron Lacy, author of Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee. And please follow us on Twitter at Strange Days 2015. Our hashtag is BeStrange. You can follow us on our Facebook also, but right now we're taking questions through the hashtag BeStrange. And Byron, it's been an amazing story so far. I want to thank you again for coming onto the show and sharing your experience. Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really thrilled to be able to talk about it to people.
We really appreciate you talking about it. One of the questions I wanted to talk to you about, and I want to let you know that I haven't got through the whole book, but from what I've read, it seems like there's a part in the book that talks about you and Daryl Sims.
Yes, Daryl Sims.
Yes, please go ahead.
Daryl Sims is a friend of mine, and he's called an alien hunter. In 2009, after I found out what was going on, I came pretty close to losing my mind in some ways. It was very confusing to find out that reality was totally different from what I thought it had been. And then not being able to talk to people because I was cautioned about it, and I knew they would think I was nuts. I told them I was abducted. There's been a great deal of progress in the last 6 years with people that are not abducted, knowing what's going on. Well, I wanted to talk to someone, and I wanted someone to talk to my case about that would know what they were doing, but I didn't want to go anywhere. And I figured, well, I can go to Houston pretty easy because it's only 2.5 hours from my house. So I looked on the internet, and I came across Daryl Sims, the alien hunter. And I looked at his webpage. I liked everything I read. He had contracted with the CIA, and the friend that had told me that I was an abductee thought I shouldn't contact him, but I didn't care. I went ahead and I wrote him a long email that probably would have been 3 pages typed that covered a lot of the things that had happened to me in brief form, not all of them, but some, and sent it to him, and surprisingly heard back from him. And he wanted me to come to a UFO meeting. He wanted to meet me in person, and he sent me a list of about 40 or 50 questions that he wanted me to answer and send them back to him. So I did. Actually, it was after I sent the questions back that he told me he wanted to meet me. So I tried to go to a UFO meeting and couldn't. Then I tried again, and I was determined. So I got my friend to go with me. And he's called Frank in the book, but that's not his name. But it'll do. So Frank and I went to Houston, and got there a little early because I like to have plenty of time, and sat down, and there was a guy messing with a computer and a projector and some stuff, a computer projector, video screen projector. And I thought, that's probably him. I went up and talked to him, and he knew who I was the minute I told him my name, which that alone made me feel real good because, I know he dealt with a lot of people, and I could have just easily been forgotten, but I wasn't. And we talked, and one of the main things we talked about during that first meeting when I talked with him alone was that so many things I thought I had accomplished spiritually, and interactions that I had with guardian angels and with spirit guides, I thought it was aliens instead. And he said, you're absolutely right. He said, lots of people found that out. So I was able to email him and tell him when something would happen. And it took a while, but he kept wanting me to send him pictures of my wounds. And it was the hardest thing to photograph them. I'd get ready to photograph a bruise or something, and then I'd need to go get a drink of water. And then I'd go, I'll do this tomorrow. I'm tired. And by the time I get around to photographing some of them, they were gone. In fact, I had a puncture disappear in 6 hours, completely healed in the palm of my hand. So anyway, he kept telling me to photograph, and I got to where I would just automatically get up and photograph the thing when I found it, no matter how much discomfort it was causing me. So, and somehow that just broke through a wall, and I was able to start photographing things. But he gave me a lot of encouragement. He told me I wasn't crazy. I know one time I said, you know, I'm supposed to be a smart person, and it has taken me 60 years to be, well, at that time it was 40-something years, or 50-something, let's just say 50. 50 years, 59 years, to figure this out. And he said, don't worry about that. This is what they do. They get you to not realize what's going on. They make you forget. So I felt better about that too. He helped me feel better about everything. And part of talking to him caused me to formulate my ideas that I wanted to be happy and not let this be a big dark shadow over my life that kept me from being happy. I know people that are abducted and they're just angry constantly, and I can't live like that. I have to make lemonade. So this led to me talking to them. That's a whole different story, but I can go ahead into it if that's all right.
Sure. But before you do that, I did wanted to bring up a question from our producer, Holographic, and which ties into the marks and that you were talking about, and with Daryl. Were there ever any implants that you can think of that you know is part of your experience?
Well, yes. I have an implant in my head, and it's above my right eye. I have 3 tones that go through my right ear constantly, tinnitus, and then 2 other tones that go through my left ear, and sometimes it will be silent. Like right now, my left ear does not have a sound in it, but there's a chirping in my right ear, and then a long hissing sound under that. And none of them, I've checked these over the years, none of them match my heartbeat. So they're not driven by my pulsing blood. And at one time, I actually could control them. And it was for a couple of months. I could turn the chirping into a solid sound, and I could turn the volume down, and it would go away. But from everything I know now, they may have been doing that. But sometimes they humor me, and sometimes they play tricks on me.
We have Les Johnson, and he joined us in the Hangouts, and if you don't mind, he would like to personally ask you some questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Les, say hi to Byron.
Hi, Byron. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. How are you doing?
You sound like you're much more comfortable. I'm very happy to hear that. First thing I wanted to say was you're a hero to people. I hope you realize that. And thank you very much for what you're doing, because it's very important for people like you that have experiences to let everybody know what you've been through. And I know you have to have post-traumatic stress, and you've been through a lot, and just thank you very much for everything you've done, for the book you've written, and for being on the show tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
And Byron,
I have a friend that told me that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She thinks I'm an ambassador. She thinks I'm an ambassador for abductees to the rest of the world. I thought that sounded good.
Well, I'll have to agree. Byron, This is the first question I wanted to ask. I noticed earlier you said you were taking supplements and stuff like that. Do you have any specific type of blood disorders that you know of?
No. I've been to a doctor. I've been X-rayed. He told me that my skeletal system is healthier than his. I have no arthritis. The only thing I have is hypoglycemia.
Wow.
And I control that with diet. That is low blood sugar.
Wow, that is fabulous. Thank you very much for answering my question, sir. And I'll hand you back over to Dave. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thanks, Les.
Dave?
Yes.
I was going to say, I have not been to a doctor for an illness since 2009. I've been to a doctor once when I crammed my hand between a trailer hitch in my car, and I wanted to make sure I hadn't broken my finger. And the other time was when I woke up with this big burgundy bruise on my eyeball going from the iris down under. And I was afraid I had an infection. So I went to urgent care, or whatever they're called, and the doctor said it was a ocular hematoma. Nothing to worry about. It would be gone in 1 to 2 weeks. And I said, how could I get this? And he said, well, you got it when you stuck your finger in your eye. And I said, I didn't stick my finger in my eye. Well, that was pretty much the end of the conversation. But it was gone in 2 days.
It just disappeared, huh?
Yep. It didn't even turn green or anything. You know how blood turns green as it dissipates from a bruise. It was just gone. I was glad. And it never did hurt.
Wow.
One of my implants.
Yes, please.
Okay. Back to the implants real quick. I decided to try a CD for curing tinnitus. And I used it. It said to use it. It was these sonic frequencies that you just listen to. Well, I listened to that 3 and 4 and 5 times a day, 27 minutes per time, every day. And after about a week and a half, there was suddenly complete silence in my head for the very first time in my life. So I was overjoyed. It was a new experience. And that evening, I sat down to watch TV, and suddenly the wrong TV show was on, and my forehead felt like it was filled with compressed air, and my nasal passage on the right side burned as if up into my head, as if someone had stuck their finger or something way up in my head. And the minute I felt these feelings, these sensations, they were at full volume, and they quickly went down and were gone. And I was glad of that. And then I knew I was watching a different TV. I had some missing time, and my tinnitus was louder than it had ever been before. And it continued into the next day, and I started complaining to them about it. I said, well, I won't say what I said. You have messed something up, and I want you to fix it. And later that evening, I was going to watch TV again. I like to watch TV in the evenings to unwind. Well, I kept getting this gnawing desire to go to bed. And I'm going, it's only like 8 o'clock. I could be wrong on the time, but it was around then. So it wouldn't stop. So I went and laid down and started meditating. And I was pulled. I've only been into this trance of this sort 5 or 6 times now. I couldn't feel my heart beating. I couldn't feel my breath. There were no phosphines in my field of vision. I had no awareness of my body whatsoever, except I felt my solar plexus. And I felt them mess with my solar plexus, and they've done this a couple of times, and I'm convinced that there is a control panel down there that we don't know about. The Maharishis may know. But anyway, the sound, it started getting less and less, and then it was to its normal volume. And then I was wide awake, and I felt good, too. I had actually felt pretty bad that day. I felt fine, and the tinnitus was normal again, so they fixed it.
Wow, that's so they fixed it when you requested them to fix it.
Yes. Oh, I told them I was pissed off at them. I was really angry. I fussed at them. I have since learned that they hear everything I say, but at that point, I thought that I had to use a lot of repetition. I had to be manic about what I was telling them. So I complained about that for 3 or 4 hours. Plus, I couldn't think of anything else because it didn't feel good, and the noise that was going on. They had made an error. What had happened was I had killed an implant with that CD, and they replaced it or fixed it. I guess they just replaced it with another one. I thought about using that CD again, and I just couldn't. And I thought, I don't want to go through that again. Actually, it was okay for once. You know, it was sort of fun in an odd way. I mean, to see a TV show change in front of you. And for 4 days, my sinuses were more open than they ever are. I could breathe so easily, it was ridiculous. And then it went away. So they have some kind of super antihistamine that they pump into your nose if they need to do anything up in your sinuses.
I wonder if that has to do with maybe when they fixed the implant, when they replaced it, whatever they did to it. I wonder if that has to do, maybe it's part of the anesthesia that they use, or an effect thereof, as an antihistamine.
I don't know. It could be. It makes sense. But I don't know if they use an anesthesia. I know they can knock you out, but they can do so many things with our perceptions that I think that can actually just keep you from perceiving what's going on and make you perceive something else. Like, there was no pirate in my room. That was a mantis creature. It was even shaped sort of like a mantis. Big head, only it was the hat. The robe that these ones I've seen wear would be his vest and shirt.
I got you. That kind of leads me in. Well, Les had a couple more questions, but before I get to them, now, do you?
Okay.
We know you're an abductee. Now the question is, do you ever remember being on their ships?
Yes. I have a memory of looking at the grocery store that I worked in from the air. And I have a memory of looking out a window in some kind of little room. And I feel like, when I have this memory, like there are 2 or 3 of them, but they're behind me. However, the feeling of the situation is not like I was upset with them or anything. So they were letting me look. And then, now that came after the first series of hypnosis. I just remembered that later, not during the hypnosis, but later, from a suggestion of hers to remember some things. But in 2009, I was on their ship. They let me remember. And this was after I found out what was going on, and I thought I might be insane. And for hours, I would walk back and forth across 2 acres under the electric line that runs through the woods where there's a clearing. And I just kept talking to them. And I honed it down where I said, I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what you're doing. And I said that over and over and over. And I did this for 5 days. Unless it was 3. 3 to 5 days. I don't want to lie. And I went and played at the Country Kitchen, which was a little bitty restaurant, smaller than my house, out here in the country. And it was horrible. Everything was great till I opened my mouth, and then I started forgetting words. And I probably made up the lyrics to 3/4 of each song that I sang. And I wanted to run, and I wanted to run straight out of that building, but I knew I couldn't carry the big speakers or anything with me, so I just stayed. A man came out and sat down with me, and he said, just look at me, and I'm going to play the guitar. You can get your words out of your case and sing them. So we did that, and I sang. The last song I sang that night was Hey, Mr. Spaceman by the Byrds, because I've always loved that song. Well, I come home, and it turned out good after he came up there, and everybody had a good time, the 15 people that were there watching, which seemed like thousands. So anyway, I couldn't get to sleep, and I decided I was just going to meditate, and I used a CD that's by a company that I don't think it exists, called Saigon, and they make meditation CDs that entrain your brain. And I started listening to it. It was going good. I was relaxing. Then suddenly, I was pulled down. I couldn't feel my heart. It was the same thing. I couldn't feel my heart. I couldn't tell if I was breathing. No phosphenes. Nothing this time. And then I opened my eyes, and I was in this hammock thing, but it was connected from side to side instead of end to end, like a big, huge piece of parchment, or it looked a lot like leather, but it wasn't leather. I could tell it had never been alive by touching it, and it had blankets in the bottom of it, and I was laying in it, and one of the blankets was a child's blanket. The room had a dim light that came somehow, apparently from the entire ceiling. I couldn't really see the ceiling because it was all foggy looking. And then it was a little while after that I realized I didn't have my glasses on. So, which is interesting. In dreams, I always had my glasses on. But I crawled out of this thing, this hammock, and I didn't have any clothes on, just like when I went to bed to meditate. And I looked around the room. I couldn't really see corners in the walls, but it didn't seem like it was a round room, and it wasn't cold, and I was glad for that. And then I heard something coming down a little hallway. I heard them on the other side of the door coming, and I sort of panicked, and I go, wow, I don't know if I'm ready to do this. And I started to crawl back in the hammock. Then I was in a different room. It was like a cut in a movie. And probably probably missing time, or just a memory wipe at that point, not completely, because I remembered the first stuff. Well, then I was in another room, and I was on this table, and there were 3 grays down at the bottom of the table, and a figure standing behind the table. But then suddenly, I was in my bed also. And I was looking at this, but my eyes were closed. I figured that out. Now, Daryl has told me that they can make you see through their eyes. So, and you think you're looking through your eyes, but you're looking through theirs. Well, I was beginning to panic, and the guy back behind the 3 grays and behind me, who I had never seen of before, I'd never heard of. I'd only heard of the grays. Well, he looked like a huge praying mantis wearing a robe, and it was rather oriental looking. And it covered his hands and his feet. All I could see basically was his head, and it was very large, and he had these 2 eyes out near the end of it. I don't remember his coloring because it was so dark in there. Well, he says, don't be afraid. He doesn't say it out loud, but I hear it in my head. And instantly, I was calm. I could not have been afraid if I wanted to. And it wasn't because he suggested it. It was he controlled my automatic nervous system completely when he said that.
Right. He just kind of
So
short-circuited your brain, basically.
Yeah. He made me calm. And then the picture turns to black and white that I was looking at. And then it pans in just on me, which is the most disappointing thing about it, because then the picture turned into X-ray. And I could see inside of my body. I could see from my neck down almost to my knees on this table. And I couldn't see the grays. And then well, anyway, then I saw him insert the anal probe into my body. And then I was completely awake. And oddly, I felt fantastic. I felt great. I thought, wow, I've been on their ship. And I went right to sleep. Now, it always takes me an hour to get to sleep, maybe longer. So that's sort of weird, but I went right to sleep. I woke up in the morning, and I reached over and grabbed the paper and pencil, and I drew that creature that I saw. Not a great, but I drew him. Well, then I started crying. And I cried for 30 minutes to an hour. And I didn't even know what I was crying about. Because at that point I was thinking this had been a vision, that they were showing me something. Well, on talking to Daryl about this, he said, no, it was not a vision. That really happened. And I didn't want to believe him. And I'd written a book, working on it. A friend of mine came over, who turns out he's abducted, and I read him that passage, and I read him, and he looks at me and goes, man, that doesn't sound like a vision. It sounds like you were abducted. And I realized he was right, because when I quit crying, I pulled myself together. Well, during that day, I went to a restaurant, and I ate everything on my plate. And a lot of those things that were on there, like broccoli, I don't like. They tasted fantastic. Suddenly I realized I could eat probably anything, and it tasted good instead of bad. Over a period of days, I started listening to country music, classical music, and at that point, I'd been sort of fixated on 60s rock and roll. I started listening to popular music. I started watching TV shows that I had never liked, and I could see things in them. It wasn't that the TV show was bad. It was that I didn't have the ability to perceive that it was good at that point because of my own programming in my ego. And somehow that had all been changed, and my ability to perceive had been expanded to where I could enjoy so many more things, and I became gregarious. Because like in 2008, I probably would not be talking to you on the phone in front of people, even before I knew about the aliens. And then I started singing with some bands.
I'm sorry, it sounds like you've been able to open up, and things have gotten a lot better, and that's really awesome to hear, this part of your story so far. And we are Beyond the Strange. I am Dave Cruz. We are talking with Byron Lacy, and it's been a fascinating evening so far. And we are going to go to our last break. But when we come back, we're going to talk to Byron some more. And yeah, it's been really good. It's just been awesome. So please stick around. We'll be back. We are back. This is Beyond the Strange. I am Dave Cruz, your host, and we are speaking with Byron Lacy. And thanks everybody for sticking around and enjoying the show. And it's been an amazing evening, Byron. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
I kind of wanted to ask you a question about. Well, actually, we have with us Lynn from Oz, and I'm not sure if she's wanted to ask you a question, but she's with us. So, Lynn, are you there?
Just watch out for Bob.
Certainly.
Oh yeah. Say hi to Byron.
Hi Byron. I've been
Hello.
listening. At the beginning of the show, did you say that you were abducted last night?
Well, I don't know if you'd call it abducted or visited, but yes, I did. I have plenty of subjective feelings going on in my body to think that that happened.
Oh wow. Do you remember the first time that you went up into a spaceship?
I'm sorry I missed that.
Do you recall the first time that you were abducted and taken up to a spaceship?
I'm aware of 3 times. I'm aware of the very first time, but that all took place in my room, as far as I know. I'm aware of, remember the one I just talked about that happened in 2009. And then I wasn't taken to a spaceship, but on March 8th of this year, I was pulled out of my body into another dimension where I was spoken to by 3 elders.
And that kind of leads into Les having another question. He's wondering, do you recall any other human beings or possibly hybrids in your experiences?
You mean in conjunction with the aliens?
Yes.
No, I don't. It has turned out that a lot of my friends are abductees, and they didn't know it until I started talking about it.
So
to them.
So basically, with you and the aliens, it's basically just kind of more or less a one-on-one. It's not
Yes.
not to your knowledge. It's not any type of group experience or any of that type of thing, right?
As far as I know, but I have been told by another person that they saw me on a ship 10, 15 years ago, and that I was leading some of the abductees around, and she did not like me because I was working with them, and she didn't like them at that time. Now, I don't remember that, but she has a clear memory of it.
Wow, that's yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I used to go to this psychic, and I would complain about being tired all the time. And she said, well, if you wouldn't stay up working all night long, you wouldn't be tired. And I said, I don't stay up working all night long. I go to bed at 10 o'clock. I get up at 8. And she was always talking about UFOs, aliens around her property, going in a ship. She'd talk about it, and I'd look at her like, are you nuts? Why am I giving you money to tell me this? Well, because you're right all the time, but I think you're wrong about this. That's what I was thinking at the time. I was thinking the same thing that people would be saying to me.
Wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, that would be really strange because, I mean, what your own personal experience is that it's more of a one-on-one, but now you've got another person telling you that you're actually leading a group of abductees around. I mean, that would be just, I mean, to me, that would just flabbergast me right there. I mean, I would be out.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty strange, but I really have a hard time discounting almost anything at the moment unless I find proof to the contrary.
How frequent is that, Byron, that you do this?
I'm taking 1 to 3 times a month.
Holy crap.
Now, always around the 21st, which is why the 18th is close to the 21st. And that was, I mean, the 17th last night or this morning. So, and these, as far as I can tell, these are the people that have saved my life. These are my family, and I believe they're Lyrans. Either that or they're Greys sent by them. And then there are just random groups, I've been told. And from my experiences, it's looked like that. There's a third time, they never do the same thing. They never really hurt me that I know of, but I'll find bruises and stuff. Of course, I find that with all the groups. The third group is the Marauders, and they're the ones I dislike the most. And they're the ones that leave needle holes in my skull and take neurotransmitters out of my brain. Believe me, you can feel pretty bad when they do that. In fact, it seems like depression, except one night I've gotten so good about tuning in on the way I feel when I'm meditating and just letting it be, and then it's almost like opening a box, and I find out where it's coming from. Well, when I did this with my depression, and my first inclination anytime there's unpleasantness is to try to run from it with aspirin or whatever, any kind of unpleasantness you want to get away from. So this time, I did not run from it. I let it be what it was. And suddenly I could feel very plainly that there was something missing from my physical brain. And this led me to a bunch of experiments. One day I was feeling really bad, and I went and got a Diet Coke, which I had quit drinking, and I have since then too. They're not good for you.
Not good for you at all.
So I think it's because the aspartame in it, the L-phenylalanine, has been molecularly altered, so it fills the space that it's supposed to go into in your brain, but it doesn't do what it's supposed to do because it's not complete. So now that's just my theory. But anyway, I drank this Diet Coke and I felt better. I'm going, why do I feel better? So I went on the internet and I looked it up, and the only thing that's in colas that is not in other drinks is phosphoric acid. And phosphoric acid was going to be used during World War I as an antidote for nerve gas, because nerve gas, it either I don't remember which, it lowers or raises the choline in your body, which causes your muscles to stiffen up and your heart stiffens up and you die. It's very unpleasant. But I thought, okay, well, there's actually something with a pharmacological effect in Coca-Cola. So I also went and bought some choline. And I started with 1,000 and worked up to 3,000 milligrams of choline. And I felt a heck of a lot better. And by the end of the day, I felt really good. Well, it was working, but it wasn't working good enough. Mm-hmm. And it was still taking 2 days to actually get to complete normal. I read some things on the internet then. Oh, I'm sorry. The only thing that'll lower choline levels besides pesticides or poisons is an electromagnetic field. So I figured I'd been on a spaceship. Since then, I've changed my mind about that, although that is possible, part of it. But I found some guy on Facebook had a picture of them taking neurotransmitters that he had drawn, that he had made. It wasn't a photograph of them. That they take neurotransmitters out of your brain, and he had some medical education. So anyway, I had found little scabs in the exact places where he showed that they take epinephrine or adrenaline, serotonin, dopamine, and maybe one or two others out of your head. I had found those things. So I went and I looked up the precursors to all of these, which are amino acids, L-phenylalanine, GABA, tyrosine, choline, and in fact, I take those every day now. When I feel bad from them, I take 2 or 3 times as much. But so I started feeling better. The depression went away completely, and I've had a few bouts where I took antidepressants and they didn't work. I could only take them for like 2 days, and I started getting every bad side effect there was because I wasn't really depressed. In fact, the only thing that ever worked on me like that was Valium. And it worked like an antidepressant when it is a depressant. The doctor was confused, but he let me have it anyway. That was in the 70s.
Byron, I'm sorry. I wanted to. That's fascinating, though. I was going to comment on that, but a couple of questions came in, and I was hoping to ask them before we end the show. One of the questions comes from Les, and he asked, when you met Daryl Sims, did he work with you at all, as in regress you at all? And then we have a second question from Twitter, so I'll wait until after you answer that first question.
Did you say with regressions?
Yes, with Daryl Sims. Did you ever work with Daryl at all in regressions?
No, I couldn't force myself to go to Houston very much, and his career was just beginning to really take off, where he was going around to different places. Like, he's just recently been to India. So, no, we never got around to that. He did do, before I did my speech at my lecture, he did a writing hand analysis, because he does handwriting analysis in his detective work. And he said, he actually told me a bunch of stuff that I didn't know you could tell from your handwriting, but he also said that what I said, I completely 100% believed was the truth, that I would not lie.
And an add-on to that question is, have you been regressed at all by anybody?
Yes, I've been regressed by two people. One was at the Dreamland Festival, where we looked at, I met this woman there, and we ended up having dinner together on the last day, because our planes were leaving at 5, so we had 4 hours to kill. She was a hypnotherapist. She wasn't doing it for a living or anything yet. She was hoping to work with abductees, and she lived in Canada, and we did a regression, and it's covered pretty good in the book. We looked at the school abduction, where I found that all of us went up into the ship. Mm-hmm. And some of the kids were crying. They weren't too happy. And somehow I seemed to be doing okay, which was strange. And we did another thing, but I don't remember what it was right now. It's in my book, and I'm outside.
No, it's quite all right.
I did a regression with a hypnotherapist in Tyler, and he had actually worked with some abductees before, which I was sort of shocked in a way, but I don't know why. Anyway, we went over several different things and got some pretty good information. And the one that sticks in my head right now is the little soldiers, and then the baby. I've always been paranoid of babies. Which was sort of difficult when I worked with CPS, but luckily they only actually gave me one baby case. They've always looked like alien creatures to me. So, and I just didn't like them. Well, in one of the regressions, I am in a room, and there are these little babies in these bubbly tubes of water, big glass columnar things, and they look really strange. But that's all I remember about it. However, after that regression, it was not more than a week. I went to visit a friend who worked in an antique store in town. When I walked in, he was with a woman talking to him who had a baby. And I thought that was the cutest thing I'd ever seen, and I wanted to hold it, but just never got the opportunity. So, but I felt, wow, this is really weird. I don't mind babies anymore, and I don't. They don't bother me at all. And they don't look alien anymore.
That is just amazing how, I mean, and then it just went away. You totally feel comfortable now.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really interesting. And we do have a question from Twitter, and Dennis would like to ask, are there any daily, weekly, monthly odd experiences around the household? Noises, objects moved, flashes, etc.
Oh, yeah. Today, flashes lights all the time. When I got my kittens 2 years ago, and I had this new phone, I started videotaping them, and I found orbs all over the place. And but the other day, this was like 2 weeks ago, I take niacin before I go to sleep, because it helps me goes to sleep. Helps me go to sleep, but it's very acidic. Niacin is an acid. So I keep a bottle of Tums and a flashlight, because if you tried to walk through my house in the dark, you'd die from all the clutter. So I have a flashlight and a bottle of Tums on the bed. I go in to go to bed, and I need to go get something to from the kitchen. So I looked down for the flashlight, and it wasn't there. And I looked down for the times then, and they weren't there. Both of them gone. So I looked all around the bed, and there's no room under the bed. It's on a huge box that I store stuff in. It's solid. I looked around, they weren't there. They weren't in any of the rooms in the house. I took 15 minutes to search the whole house, and I just went, to heck with it. I got a new bottle of Tums and opened it up. I got a different flashlight out of the kitchen cabinet drawer, and I went in, put them on the bed where I always place the others, right next, 1 foot from my pillow. I go to sleep. The next morning, I wake up, and I reach over. It's still dark because I wake up at 4:45 most of the time, sometimes 5 or 6. Turn on the phone for the light, and because I want to get the flashlight, I prefer to use it because you don't have to keep turning it on. And there, on the on the bed next to my pillow, 2 bottles of Tums, 2 flashlights, all right in a neat, orderly row. And then I get up, and I find a bruise, 2 bruises, right above, on the side of my leg, right above my right knee. And I went, well, they took that stuff, they put it back, and then they even bruised me for verification.
Well, that was nice of them. Just kidding. I remember reading that post on your Facebook, as a matter of fact.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's just something. I mean, I don't think I could ever get used to anything like that, Byron. You're, like Les said, man, you're definitely a hero, and we so appreciate you coming on to the show and sharing experience. And please, we want you to come back again and just come on to the show and talk some more. Where can we find your information? On Facebook and Twitter? Do you have a website? When is your book available? That sort of thing.
Well, I'm going to be reformatting the book tomorrow and then sending it to Create Space, and there's a couple of things that they're going to do. They're going to fix the cover for me, and I figure that'll take 7 days. So I'm pretty darn sure it's going to be published, but both on the first week of November or right before the first week of November. And it will be on Amazon.com. And I do not have a web page for any of that right now. I use my Facebook, and I'm Byron Lacy, and you can friend me or just send me a PM on Facebook if you wanted to.
We'll definitely get the links up in our Facebook on the Beyond the Strange webpage, also along with our Facebook. And it's just been a fascinating evening, Byron. Brian, do you have anything that you want to ask Byron before he goes?
Oh, no. I just want to thank him for being on the show.
It's been an amazing night, Byron. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to being on again.
Yes, we look forward to you coming back. And if you don't mind sticking around a little bit, well, we'd still like to talk to you a little bit after we end the show. So
no
stick
problem.
around. Awesome. Just hang on. Thank you. Oh, Brian, that's been amazing. I mean, wow.
Yeah, wow. I mean, to be able to talk to a first-hand abductee and experiencer is something, and for somebody to stand up and say, this is exactly what happened, and to write a book about it is just fantastic.
It is, and I don't think I told Byron, there's just no way I could get used to that, and I mean, wow, that's just amazing what goes on in this world people just don't know about. And that's what we like to bring to the show, is people who are out there with these experiences, and Byron is definitely one of them, and we will have him back on the show. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and for listening and participating. Thank you, Brian, for being on the show also. And we want to thank our producer, Holographic, Also like to thank my good friend Alan Hall, who writes and plays some of the bumper music that you've been hearing. He's really awesome, especially the closing music. Oh, and don't forget, next week we're going to have a Halloween special with Brian Anderson and Les Johnson III. So, until then, have a great night, and remember, Beyonders believe. See ya.